Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this new edition of LuderickNation. My name's Les Hornery, and we're here today talking with the LuderickAngler. Hey, Royce, could you please introduce yourself to the listeners, please?
Yeah, g'day, my name's Royce, 45, third generation, along with my brother Garth, that was taught lake fishing, as we called it. Been doing it for about 40 years. Dad fished from for 60, my grandfather for over 60. Based in Sydney, down the southern suburbs, so I fish anywhere from the Royal National Park up to probably Bondi, South Head, and right through the harbour, Port Hacking, Georges River. So cover a fair bit of territory, depending on the time of the year. I suppose I'll start off, for those people that haven't done any, I'm going to call them blackfish because that's what I always had.
Yeah, sure.
So if I'm going to fish summer, I'm going to fish the ocean rocks on most weekends. If the tides aren't too big, you get those big early morning king tides. And the reason for that is over the years, we've always found the bulk of the fish leave the estuary and go out on the ocean rocks about October, so mid-spring.
Yep.
And start to do their spawn, and then they just run the east coast. So those people want to go out and, that are accustomed to rock fishing and want to target something a bit different, that's the time to do it. And look for your ledges with your wash with some bait on it. But at the same time, you'll still do well in the harbour, particularly lower harbour, your middle head, middle harbour itself. So you're talking around the vicinity of the Spit and down along there, over around Manly Way. You still got fish that are inside but quite close to the ocean, and that's one option for people going to hook. And then as it cools down and gets around April, then you can start looking in the Georges River, Botany Bay, along the rock walls. When they start to come back inside, what we call when the fish come into winter, you'll still get fish out the ocean rocks right through the winter in spots. It's not all of them want to come in. So that's and then you'll get the fish in the estuary right through to August, September in numbers. So for those that aren't keen on the ocean rocks or aren't as mobile or got young kids, you have a look in your estuaries, and that applies right up and down the coast. And different times of the year, fish come into the estuaries and go out. So it's just a matter, if you're looking for a spot, I mean, what you're looking for a water that isn't barren. So kelp beds, weed beds, pylons with growth on them, a good water depth. You're probably looking 8 to 10 foot of water in the old imperial scale. So, say that's 3 metres. And then the water doesn't necessarily have to be coloured. I've caught them in water that's gin clear and you can't see the fish because they actually go snow white over the sand patches where there's kelp beds. And,
nice.
It's a matter, they're either there or they're not, is one thing.
Royce, can I ask you a little bit about the early days? Can I take you back to when it is that your journey started? How did this the love of this type of fishing start with you?
I was probably about 4 years old. And the spot called the Chains on Hickson Road. Everyone knows it. It's no secret, this spot. It's between Pier 1 and 2. It was frequented by the likes of Russian Joe, Bill the Hungarian, Lockie Nelson. These are all blokes that are dead that I grew up fishing around. They were all well-known, die-hard black fishermen in the day. And Dad used to fish down there with them, and I was given a 6-foot sloppy spin rod with a Mitchell 301 on it. I got a fish that would have gone 2.25, 2.5 pounds. That was my first fish.
Wow.
It was 4 years.
That would have taken some bringing in for a 4-year-old.
Yeah, well, apparently I went right with like a beetroot, and took me forever to land on a 6-foot spin rod. But I got it, and from there, slowly, surely, by the time I was about 9, 10, I had a 9-foot rod with a spin reel on to start with. He still wasn't proficient as a centre pin. And, went from there, and just as I got bigger and stronger, longer rods, centre pins, and pretty much every school holidays, every spare weekend, all I pretty much chased was blackfish. I'd go chasing other stuff now and then on the odd occasion, but pretty much, I was brought up in the old school where you're introduced to blackfish, that's what you chased, and, you were lucky enough to know people and be introduced, and you learn a lot. Because I suppose where a lot of people nowadays, people don't get introduced that way to the frequency that they were, or they just, they're not lucky enough to be in a family such as you or I that have got that found in blackfishing. So that's where it started. Nowadays, I still chase them 90% of the time, except when the kingfish run over summer and they're coming close to the shore in the shallow bays in the Parramatta River, and I'm chasing land-based kingfish on fly rods when they're busting up. But that's probably, that fills about 10% of the time.
Yeah, nice. Well, part of this LuderickNation journey that I'm on, I'm trying to, get a little bit of information out there to the younger folk. I've got a son who's 22, who's taken a little bit of an interest, but up until now he knew nothing about it. I didn't share any of the information that I had, and I'm a third-generation Luderick fisherman. So part of that is why I'm talking to you today. Why do you think it could be a good solution for young people? It's quite a you're fishing off the shore to start with, aren't you? Mostly.
Yeah, mostly. I've had a boat in the past, and fished all the famous spots in the Georges River. Bakers, Blackbutt, Soily Bottom, Blackguard. Names that are long forgotten, and people know the spots to pull up to them, but they don't know the actual name. But yeah, most of the fishing is done shore-based these days, and from spots that they've been, there's spots that I used to fish that just don't exist anymore because of development. A lot of Hickson Road, a lot of Darling Harbour and Piermont, all the spots have got because they're just developed, and there's no fishing signs, or that spot's just being concreted over.
Yeah, the progress of that shoreline, or the foreshore, is certainly changing in Sydney, where you are. Not so much here. I'm in Newcastle, and of course, we fish out of the Swansea up at Nelson's Bay, and out of Stockton, and I think those places are going to remain the same for the next 15, 20, maybe 100 years. But what is it, Royce? What is the thing that the blackfish fishing, is it the fight they put up? Is it the art? Is it the rig that you need? What is it for you that really brings you back?
I think, for the younger people that haven't got into it and want to give it a go, now, pound for pound, on the gear you're using, I use gear that's, 50, 60, rods that are 50, 60 years old, glass rods, that you just don't get today. they're quite parabolic in action, and centre pins, handmade cedar floats, all of that put together, it's stuff. And even like people have a modern, softer rod, it's still the same, but it's that you watch that float, you watch go down, you lift the rod, when you feel the weight and they take off. Now, some fish, they'll just go straight to the bottom. Some have that big tail and won't come up. Other fish take off a million miles an hour. You just don't know what to expect when you hook a fish, what they're going to do. Other fish come up to the surface and just go silly. And then it's always tense to you. Get them in the landing net. So they never give up. They're just such a powerful fish. And it's from the minute you get to your spot and working out whether they're there or not, and if they are, and getting them burled up and working out what your drift's doing and how deep you're fishing, putting all those elements together and to finally hook the fish, there's the satisfaction. I mean, there's even the satisfaction of going out the day before and going, well, where am I going to find some bait? And when you find a good patch of greenwood, you're like, hello, there's the first bit, that you're happy. Then you go, right, next day I'm going to this spot. And you get there, you go, the fish are here. Good. Working out how they're biting, and then putting all that together, you've got to have a certain level of patience. You've got to have a certain level of perseverance. And then when you put all that together and you come up tight, you might get one fish, you might get your bag limit. Who knows? But it's the satisfaction of knowing you put a plan in place and that plan's come off. Yeah. Some days the plan doesn't come off and you go, right, what do I do next weekend?
Yeah, I think the pieces of the puzzle is what it is for me as well. As I said, I'm trying to talk to a lot of the PlayStation generation, and there was a term that you used in that explanation that is going to make it very difficult for these guys, and that is that they don't have the patience. They haven't been brought up with the patience. But it's something that we can teach them. But for me, it was about the different style of fishing. Like normally the people that I talk to and my son's friends, they understand fishing is where you throw the bait a long way away, you catch a fish and you reel it in. That's traditionally what they think fishing is. And I talk to them about, well, no, what we're trying to do with these great big long rods is that we're trying to lure a fish from the edge where we're standing, just under our feet. And then when we catch the fish, we're trying to make sure we can keep the fish out into the deeper water, away from the rocks and the weeds and that's why we're doing. So we're not actually hauling the fish in. We're not reeling it in flat out. We're really, would you agree that you're just really holding the fish until you can get, a breath that maybe the fish is starting to tire a bit?
Yeah, but to a point, some days I'll find the fish are holding, right in close to where you are. And other days, you're fishing 2-3 rods out from the bank, and they're out in deeper, cleaner water. It just, it depends where they're holding. Some days you hook a fish and you just, you put the brake on the reel and you just let the rod do the work and you let the fish kick about and then you start to bring it in. Other days, some fish, they'll run and you've just got to palm the reel and let them take off out in deeper water and let them tire themselves out. Then there's other times they just come straight back at your feet and you're whining like mad. And you are. You're trying to keep them out of structures. It depends on the individual fish, what it wants to do. Was it 92? I got my biggest fish out of Kurnell off the rocks, and it went 5 3/4 pound cleans.
And what how many centimetres would that be?
Oh, when we used to measure them back in the day, we used to weigh them.
Yeah. What do you reckon?
Oh, would have been up around the 49, 50 mark. He was a big fish.
Mm.
I had to pick it up. I'm 5'9", and I've got the world's biggest hands. So I had to pick it up with two hands and tuck the rod on the arm. I couldn't pick it up with one hand. And that fish, it just went straight at the bottom, just went thump, 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 and then come up like a wet sock. But yet, I've caught 30 centimetre fish that go harder than any fish that's up around 49. It's especially in oxygenated water off the rocks. So it's just, that's the beauty of it. You just don't know what to expect. I think, these people that are just trying to bait out, waiting for someone to pick it up and run it and bring it in, they get this experience. It's a whole new level.
Yeah.
And I mean, I suppose, yeah, if you maybe some, like people with bait fishing, light bait fishing for brim and that, they'll get a similar experience, or someone that's, chasing kingfish, they'll get a similar experience where they'll get a big powerful run, they've got to play, the fish tire it out. But then it also depends on the tackle you're using. I've seen people use some horrendous tackle for blackfish over the years when they've been so thick they're committing suicide. And they just skull dragging them. But then when they're biting like they normally do, and you got to go the finesse route, it's a different story. You just can't skull drag them in.
Yeah. They're quite a unique creature. Tell me a little bit about the old gear that you like. Just throw some names out at me. I mean, there'll be a few people that listen to. I can't guarantee too many, but there'll be a few people listen to this, and they'll probably understand some of those terms. Throw me a few rod names, a few reel names, some things that some people might know.
Well, I was brought up around Butterworth, Shanks, the 5144 Butterworth, the 4126 Butterworth, Sportex. I got a very soft spot for Sportex, and it's funny because everyone wants a Sportex now. Why, I don't know. That's what I was brought up, and that's what I was hands down. There was the rock models, the 3902, the 663, the 662. I've got all of those. The estuary models in the 403 and the 287. I've got those, the 3305. It's funny now, you see all these people, they go, oh, I'd love one of those. And now, once upon a time, if you knew an old bloke was given away, he'd give you the rod if you knew him well enough, or he'd say, yeah, look, just give us a few bob. Now, trying to get one, I've got Dad's original 663 that was built at Chapman's, Sportex, at Rockdale, and Gary Chapman's long dead, and he actually built it. I want to retire that, I want to replace it, but I can't find one to replace it, so, I make do with a Snyder that I've got, which is a modern equivalent to the Sportex. Like in reels, J.W. Young's Trudex, which was a little 4-inch, and that was the Rolls Royce with centre pins back in the day. And you had Avalon Royals in the Mark II and the Mark III. So you had the small Mark II, which was just under 4-inch, the 4.5 in the Mark III. They were the only beautiful reels. The Avon Royals, they were prone to salt corrosion. The handles always froze on them because they were brass screws in all the pillars.
Yeah.
Unless you kept them greased up. That many Avon Royals went to the graveyard. Wasn't funny. It's funny, the Trudexes would never go to the graveyard. They'd never seize up. So, I think the build quality was a lot better from J.W. Young's than Grice and Young. But Grice and Young were a parts manufacturer. He was into injection moulding, he mass-produced handles and centre caps and ratchet buttons, and then they were just assembled out of the bin. Then you had other scarce reels, you had aerial style reels, small cocks, which you'd see pop up now and then. And then if you talk about more modern or Australian centre things, you got your Alvies, your akumas, and there's a modern reel. They're not traditionally centerpins, they're traditionally a Nottingham reel, because they don't float on the end cap. They just run on a spindle with a nut holding the spool on, but they still spin fantastically well on ball races and do the job remarkably well. And then you've got guys such as John Templeton up there in the Hunter region, making a very, very good replica of an Avon Royal for saltwater conditions at quite a good price. I think, there's probably a generation that's my brother's age, which is, mid-30s, so, 10 years younger than me, where they're getting into it. And with blackfish, I mean, you can go out at any stage of the day and find a spot because they're going to be there on that tide. And you spend a couple of hours and you can get a feed, and they're a great bread and butter fish. They're a great sport fish. And you can be satisfied. You don't need to spend all day and $500 in fuel going out to the continental shelf to get a yellowfin tuna.
Yeah, fair enough. Because you're, I'm looking at these photos here on the LuderickAngler, your Instagram page here, and I love the way that you're, you're posting these out into the public for people to have a look. You got pictures of a beer and a few fish and the things that you love and your cats and whatever. But it's, do you think that there's still a few fish around? I mean, honestly, from when we were younger, I'm 57, when we were younger to what my son would think now about fishing, he thinks that there are no fish left because you go out and you don't catch anything. But there seems to be, quite a few pictures of people getting their bags quite easily. I mean, they're obviously talented fishermen like yourself. I'm flat out catching one. But do you think there's still a few fish around?
Oh, look, they go in cycles, and I think they're as prolific as they were back in the 90s, and even back in the 60s when Dad was, the young bloke, just coming out of his apprenticeship. When I can clearly remember, good mate of mine, Fred, Dad and myself, this is before bag limits for people listening, and we didn't keep every fish, but in 6 trips out at Kurnell, we got 507 fish.
Oh, what? And without a net, you weren't throwing out a big net.
Yeah, and we were only fishing 6 hours a day.
Wow.
And this was Christmas 95. We got 500, and then in 2001, between 4 of us, in one session over 6 hours, we got 152. And it's still quite common when they're stored up on the ocean rocks in certain spots, between 3 or 4 anglers, you'll tally up 100 fish and you'll keep your bag limit each because you're going to be feeding neighbours and friends and yourself, and you'll keep your 10. But it's nothing to tally up 100 fish and just keep count. So, Steve, I mean, even this time last year in Sydney Harbour, some of the wharves we were fishing, between 4 of us, we were racking up 60, 70 fish a session. And you just go, right, yep, I've got the 10, you start throwing back.
Yeah, I think the 10 bag limit and the limits that they've done, across the whole fishing range is great for the angler because I mean, as you say, there's a lot there. You can catch as many as you like, but to only allowed to take 10 home, that obviously gives chance for everybody to get a feed or for you to get a feed next time you went out. Royce, I want to finish talking a little bit about the progression now to fishing with flies or even with your fly rod set up. When I'm talking to my son, he thinks fly fishing is cool. And I think, well, maybe this is a way to talk to the younger guys about getting into it without having to worry about all the rig, the float, the stopper, the hook, the sinker, goes on and on. But tell me a little bit about fishing for the Luderick with a fly and a fly rod. Is it as just exhilarating as with the float?
Oh, even more so, because there's not much of a progression. You actually, the only thing with fly is you can be limited to the depth of your fish. So probably the deepest I would set the fly out under an indicator. So those people that know anything about trout fishing, it's basically indicator nymphing. So you've got a 9 or a 10 foot 6 weight, 7 weight fly rod, a floating line. I use the New Zealand indicator system, which is the coarse sheet spool with little plastic tubes, so your indicator can slide up and down your line to set your depth as you would with a float.
Yeah.
Then a split shot, and then I use a uni knot or a surgeon knot to tie in about a foot of tippet and then a fly. And above that knot off the split shot. And that split shot helps the fly sink down. And you're dumbing the rig down a little bit because you haven't got your float and all of that. It's quite simplified. And what the thing is, like, you can cast if you can cast a fly rod, and then you can just lay that rig out, watch that indicator drift along in the current, or if you haven't got any current to sit there, when that indicator goes and you lift and you get the weight on the fly, it's the next level up from bait fishing, because I've figured them out. No, I wouldn't say I've totally figured them out, but they're visual feeders. Because I've actually been on what we call a semi-detached reef in Sydney Harbour, where you've got to wade out at low tide and get onto a high section of rocks. And the guys have been fishing with bait, and they've been getting nothing. And I've had the fly rod there with that exact setup, and I've been catching them hand over fist. Why, I don't know.
Well, for the uneducated like myself, I understand the fly is made out of plastic that looks like weed or cabbage. Why don't they just spit it out? Like what? Normally they would take the bait down and then use strike and whatever, but don't they just get a taste of the plastic, or do you spray something on it?
No, I don't treat it, and it's actually antron. And so using carpet making, which is then being dyed the colour of weed.
Oh yeah.
And when it gets wet, it actually feels like weed and looks like weed.
But does it taste like weed?
Or it may not. That's why I think a lot of the time it's a visual thing for them. And if they're in an aggressive feeding mode, they just throw caution to the wind. But they don't care.
Yeah, sure.
When they're a little more cautious, or they're being finicky and, flying what they can, then the fly, they'll come up, they'll have and you'll see the indicator will just bobble a bit, and then they'll clear off. But then there might be a bait in the water, and I'll smash that bait, or they'll keep going on with it.
Yeah. There's no rhyme nor reason.
No, but it can be, I think it can be very mood dependent.
But you're saying it's a whole lot of fun.
Absolutely, yeah. If you can tune them in on a fly, and I still burley when I've got a fly to get them tuned in. And I think that's when they're really feeding up, and that fly is a lot smaller than a bait you'd normally use, looks like a little bit of burley floating around the water. Yeah. And they're dark down, and there's a big school of fish, and they're competing for food. They just see it and they go, for the green, it looks like what's been deployed in burley, I'm going to have it. And they just grab it and they turn on it. And when they do that, you lift that rod, And, sometimes you come up tight, sometimes you don't. It's the same with bait. Sometimes you come up tight, sometimes you don't. It is. It's quite exhilarating on fly gear. And anyone that's got trout set up in a 6 or a 7 weight, even an 8 weight, with a floating line, they can utilise that and do it because you've still got that long parabolic action in the fly rod. Fly reel, essentially a centre pin with a fixed ratchet for a drag. You still get that same exhilaration, you still get that same feeling. And sometimes it can be a lot harder on a fly rod because it's that little bit shorter and it's got a little bit more give than a blackfish rod. And trying to get control with a fly rod can be it can be some tense moments.
Yeah, well, take all your experience. Look, I appreciate your time today, Royce. I have been, of course, I've done a little bit of work with a great bloke up here in Newcastle. You probably know Warwick Neal.
Yep.
He shoots the lights out every time he goes fishing. I got a feeling he must take one of those great big nets and just drag it along the rock walls to get his 10. But he tells me that he's actually fishing properly. We did a little session on him building the floats, and I know you built the floats. We'll go into that another time, but he's building a few floats. He branded some up for me for the LuderickNation. He's a wonderful guy.
No, like people like that, he's he's a lot older than me, but there's people out there that are quite humble about it, and they're happy to share aspects of the sport and and it is part of the angling world where it's, if you're lucky enough to know someone that's been doing it for as long as I have, or some of my mates have, and passed it on to people that have got no idea about it, that are just intrigued by it, then that's it. And I'm happy to pass that on. But then it gets to a point where people need to be founded in the basics, like proper rig set up, how to present a bait, what to look for in a spot, which I've touched on, and then go out there and do the hard yards. We used to use a Gregory Street directory to find our spots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, now they've got, of course, Google Maps with a view of the depth of the ocean. But I think.
Look, and that Google. That's the thing. People look at Google Maps and go like, oh yeah, that looks like a likely place to go and have a look at. I'm going to go there. But don't go out and and for people listening, if you just go point blank and go, this bloke's catching a ton of fish, whether it be me, Joe Smith, or John Ryan, or whoever, just made up names, they're catching fish week in, week out. Why? Ask them why they're catching fish week in, week out, but don't go straight and go, where are you fishing, how deep, and where are you getting your bait? Because a lot of these people aren't going to spoon feed you everything the minute you hit them up.
Yeah,
you've
that's...
got to build a rapport with someone and just they'll slowly say, look, whereabouts are you located? Whereabouts are you fishing? And I go, okay, yeah. They'll point you in the right direction, and then they'll say, go and do your homework.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's part of the challenge that I have in front of me, is that it is a secret art, and not just this fishing, most fishing, but I think a little bit more specific to this particular fishing. That the guys that I talk to, they don't want to give away the exact location, which is, it's up to them. And I'm going to provide on my new website I'm going to be launching, called LuderickNation.fish. I am going to create a interactive map for people to be able to point where they but they don't have to even pinpoint exactly where they are. But we're just trying to get a little bit of an idea how we can share some of this, because most of the people of my son's generation, if they want to find something, just jump on YouTube and they can see it. So I'm trying to provide some of that content with this talk that I'm talking with you, and I got to provide an interest first before the people before they even turn their heads. So
there's no such thing as a secret spot, but what there is, and I'll touch on it briefly before we finish up, is a thing called etiquette.
Yes.
Now, etiquette's a lot in lake fishing. If you turn up to a spot, there's no one there, right? Go and grab the spot, start fishing. Now, if you turn up and there might be one other bloke and you say, oh, there's room for another couple, you want to fish with you today. Yeah, no worries. But if there's 2 or 3 blokes saying, oh, there's not really enough room here, maybe think about your plan B. Or if you're fishing a spot where it's along retaining wall or rock ledge and there's a drift and the drift is going in a certain direction, don't go and cut into the middle of the line. Get on the end of the line and take the drift.
Yeah.
To fish. Don't go past each other. Because if you, I've happened all the time on the ocean rock. I'll be working a drift, and then someone just comes in and they just cast in front of you, right to where the fish are every time, and you turn around and say, look, do you mind getting in the line and joining the rest of it? I'm working that drift. So everyone will get a fish out. That's where my generation, the way I was brought up, the way my brother was brought up, fishing for him, and my cousin, he says me, like, my cousin and his father, who was my grandfather's brother, they were all black fishermen. Now, you were taught that etiquette. And back in the day, if I sit there a line at North Maroubra at the stake, and I went in I didn't work the drift properly, you were given there was a harsh word stake, and if you did it a second time, you get a clip over the back of the ears as a teenager.
Yeah, sure.
Can't get away with that now.
No, of course.
But
you are right, there's etiquette there. I mean, the same etiquette was when my son and myself, my father, we sit down to play cribbage. There are the rules to the game, but there's also the etiquette, and, also playing, maybe playing all that sort of sport, all that sort of stuff. There is a known etiquette, but these kids don't know that, and that's why talking to people like Warwick and yourself, and that they can start to learn what that etiquette might be, same as they went surfing.
Even some of the older generation, like people my age that just like, oh yeah, I'm going to give it a go, and they get out the ocean rocks, and they've never actually been brought up in that era. And I started fishing, very early 80s. And right through that era and right through the 90s, and then when all the old blokes started getting too long in the tooth for it, but there was that you just had to play the game and you had to take your turn. You didn't just push right in the middle. You did. I mean, I've seen blokes sent for a swim off the rocks for not playing by the rules.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's fair enough. It's one of those things, as I said, you have to know where the pecking order is, but it's also evident that we have to be able to teach those people as well. It's
not so much a pecking order. It's just I'd like to see in people that are currently fishing and people that want to get into it go over, just say g'day and say, do you mind if I fish with you? Or, is there room for one more? And don't stand, there's one bloke that gets around Sydney Harbour and he'll stand in your hip pocket. It's like, and then if you get a fish and you walk away,
he'll be fishing in
the old saying is the grave isn't even cold, he's in it. I can't abide by. And the spot's there for everyone to share, and you might get a couple of fish. You go, come and get in here, and I'll stand where you are. and we'll take turns at the fish, and and that. But if someone's not going to ask or just get greedy for fish, that's never sat well with me, and never will. And I just like that's the sort of thing I'd like to get out there to people. Go share the fish, share the spot. Everyone can get a few and enjoy the sport rather than just it's not a competition to see who gets the most fish.
Yeah, well, that's something that I'm interested in doing up here in Newcastle. Is I want to go and explore new spot. I don't just want to go to the spot where there's a mark on the map where everybody's catching the fish. That's fine. That'll be good. But there's some more beautiful spots to just go and try your luck, and you learn from what you see and what you hear and all that sort of stuff. So I'll be keen, which is obviously something you've been doing around the harbour for years now. Is just investigating spots for yourself.
Yeah, and you know what you turn up and you go, oh, hello, never fished here before, or I always had a look at it. Oh, okay, there's fish here. Okay, there you go. There's another spot to put down in the mental Rolodex and go, right, well, I'll come back here again in a couple of weeks, or I'll come back here at this time next year. See if it's, see if it was a one-off or it's actually a spot that they like to school up and hold at. That's the beauty of it. You're always learning. You never ever, you never ever can say, I know everything about blackfishing.
Because, of course.
And, for people that, with your podcast, and if people want to have a look, and they can find on YouTube, you might see yourself where I sat down with Steve Starling.
Yeah, I watched it. Actually, just before I called you, I watched the whole thing again. So, yeah, that was great. He put a lot of pictures in, which I won't be able to do in mine, but, yeah, it was a great chat.
If you want to take some stuff off Instagram and just put stuff in or stuff on your YouTube, or if you're ever down in Sydney and you want to sit down and do something, just give us a yell and let you know.
Yeah, for sure. That was a great chat, and appreciate there was a lot of learnings out of that for me as well. But look, I'm going to let you go. I asked you to have a chat to me for 20 minutes. We're doubled that now, so I appreciate your time on a Tuesday evening.
No worries, mate. Well, if you want to do it again, let me know. Or if I'm ever up your way, I'll bring a rod and a reel up and some gear, and we'll go out and have a fish and chew the fat.
Yeah, that'll be good. One thing you might be able to help me out with as we get along is if there's any photo on any of your social medias that you would like to share. I'm going to be doing a troll for the hashtag LuderickNation, so it'll pick up any photos that anybody. So I'm going to put a post up on the Facebook or those particular Facebook posts and say if anybody wants to share anything, just tag it with the hashtag LuderickNation, and it'll show up. It'll show up in my website, and then people can choose what they'd like to share.
No dramas, mate. Not a problem. We'll do.
Okay, mate.
Enjoy your evening. Thanks for the chat. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.